More often than not, stats would tell us how good or bad a superstar player fares in terms of carrying his team, so let's dive into some numbers. During the recently concluded Mavs vs Clippers first round series, Luka Doncic played a total of 284 minutes, and all in all, he was on the bench for a very small total of 52 minutes in a 7-game span. And throughout that series, the Mavs made a total of 274 field goals, with Doncic scoring or assisting on 161 of those, which means that Luka directly created 58.6% of all his team's made baskets. While in comparison, Clippers superstar Kawhi Leonard scored or assisted in 41.8% of all the Clippers made shots in that series, which is still a very huge number for a superstar, and that stat also gives us an idea of how much Kawhi has been carrying his team. But as you can see, that number still seems very small as compared to what Doncic has produced for the Mavs. And I mean, in Game 7 alone, Luka scored or assisted in 77 of the Mavs' 111 points, which is actually an NBA record for the most points assisted by or scored by a player in a game number 7. And the fact that the series even went to a 7th game simply tells us that Luka Doncic almost single-handedly beat a Clippers team which featured a 2-time Finals MVP in Kawhi, while also having the upper hand against him in most statistical categories. And so everything ultimately leads us into one single conclusion, and that is, despite Doncic putting up ridiculously dominant numbers of 35.7 points, 10.3 assists, and 7.9 rebounds, Dallas still lost the series because unlike Kawhi, who had a legitimate co-star in Paul George who did average 23.6 points for the entire 7 games, Luka Doncic just didn't have one single guy on his team who averaged more than 17 points during the entire series. And so, the message here is quite simple, and that is, Luka needs at least a better second star next to him for the Mavs to get to the next level. So, what's good guys, it's Rero Balls here, and today, we'll look at the Mavs cap situation, we'll look into possible trade scenarios, and we'll try to understand how Dallas can realistically get Luka a better co-star. And I mean, should they or can they really trade Kristaps Porzingis at this point, or should they just be patient and wait for the right time to strike for a free agent sometime in the future? But before we move on, if you happen to enjoy content like this, please make sure to hit that like button, as it definitely helps the channel's content reach more people. It only takes a second of your time, but it will be much appreciated. So let's get to it. Well, for sure, Luka Doncic's supporting cast isn't as good as the one which Kevin Durant has in Brooklyn or the one that Kawhi Leonard has with the Clippers. But I mean, Tim Hardaway Jr., Dorian Finney-Smith, Maxi Kleber, Josh Richardson, Dwight Powell, and Jalen Brunson are all capable pieces in a winning team. And more importantly, those guys' contributions are at least at par with their contracts. So basically, the odd man out in all of these seems to be the team's supposed second star, Kristaps Porzingis. While for sure, KP's raw numbers definitely aren't that bad. The 7'3" forward averaged 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks for the 2021 season, while also recording a career-best 58% true shooting percentage. While overall, Porzingis and Doncic are one of the deadliest offensive duos in the league, as all throughout the year, lineups which featured the two of them scored 120.9 points per 100 possessions, which ranks in the 95th percentile of all lineups in the NBA. But the obvious concerns with KP lie on his injury history and recent playoff performance. While knee and ankle injuries limited him to only 43 games for the 2021 season, and all in all, he has played in only 1/3 of all possible games that he could have played since being traded to Dallas. And of course, we've seen what happened in the first round against the Clippers, wherein Porzingis put up a mediocre 13.1 points, 5.4 rebounds, while shooting a poor 29.6% from deep. I mean, to be fair, you can't really put all the blame on him, as his numbers are somewhat a direct product of how Dallas designs its offense. The Mavs often used him as a stationary shooter, which of course had obvious benefits for Luka, since theoretically, KP's ability to space the floor pulls big man away from the paint, enabling Luka to score much easier at the rim. But still, I think it's still hard to disregard how a 7'3" guy like him failed to make a substantial impact against a Clippers team who often downsized throughout the series. And so, to put it simply, KP not only failed to provide a team the necessary production expected from a second star like him, but his huge contract also prevents the team from finding the right second star next to Luka moving forward. Because I mean, Porzingis is owed more than $101 million until 2024, and so it's not really hard to figure out why Dallas would want to trade him if there's realistically a path for them to turn his huge contract into some assets. But I mean, is trading him really that simple at this point? Well, for sure, KP still has star quality, but given his huge contract, his injury history, and his recent playoff performance, the Mavs definitely won't be able to get a superstar or a star caliber type of player in return for him. Well, packaging some picks alongside him could help, but the problem is Dallas has already traded their 2021 and 2023 first rounders to New York in order to acquire him back in 2019, and because of the rule which prevents teams to be without first round picks in consecutive drafts, and due to the fact that the 2023 first rounder which they gave New York actually contains top 10 protections, the earliest first round pick that Dallas could offer in the trade would be their 2027 first round pick, and their biggest draft assets at this point would be limited to first round pick swaps in 2022 and 2024. But I doubt a lot of teams would really see a lot of value in that, because by the looks of it, the Mavs will be competitive with Luka leading the charge for the foreseeable future, giving those pick swaps very little value. And also, by the looks of it, Dallas doesn't seem to have players which would have much value in the trade market as of the moment too. I mean, realistically speaking, they don't have the pieces to outbid other teams in a potential Bradley Beal trade sweepstakes. But I mean, if what we're hearing about the Warriors being interested in an Andrew Wiggins Porzingis swap is true, then I think Dallas should really bite into it. I mean, having Wiggins makes sense for the Mavs in my opinion. Wiggins is a durable wing player who doesn't have injury concerns, is also a great defender who averaged 18.6 points and shot 38% from deep during the 2021 season, and the best thing about him is that his contract expires in 2023, which is a year earlier than KP's contract expiration, which means Dallas will have cap flexibility much earlier than expected if this trade pushes through. And I mean, having Porzingis makes sense for Golden State as well. Draymond Green would be able to hide KP on defense, and just imagine the ridiculous spacing that a Steph, Clay, and KP lineup would produce. And I think Dallas should also look into making a deal with a team like Oklahoma City, who has all the cap space in the world and who appears to be willing to take on bad contracts as long as there are some picks or some assets that come with it. I mean, who knows, maybe OKC could see Porzingis as a potential value player at this point, and maybe a couple of second round picks packaged with him would convince them to ship Al Horford and a young player to Dallas. Well, as I said earlier, trading KP at this point won't get the Mavs superstar players in return, but they can still get quality type of guys, and Horford is exactly that. I mean, Al Horford is a 5-time All-Star who could provide the Mavs great floor spacing and steady rim protection, is also a career 36% three-point shooter who consistently averages at least one block a game, and just like Wiggins, Horford gives the Mavs earlier cap flexibility as is only guaranteed a relatively cheap $14.5 million in 2022 to 2023. But of course, all these trades are hypothetical, and for all we know, Donnie Nelson might not even want to really trade KB to begin with. So I mean, it's not really hard to imagine Porzingis still being a Dallas Maverick next season, provided Coach Rick Carlisle comes up with a better idea to make his fit with Doncic look much more seamless. And so to put it simply, Dallas just doesn't have the best assets in the trade market, which would mean that the best way to find Luka's co-star might be through free agency. Well, for Mavs fans, the summer of 2021 was supposed to be the year wherein Giannis joins the team to form an international big three with Luka and KP. But while that's not possible anymore, there's still a huge reason why Dallas should still pursue someone this offseason. And that's mainly because Luka Doncic is expected to sign a $201.5 million max deal this summer, which would kick in beginning in 2022. So basically, this means that this 2021 offseason will be the last time that the Mavs could really make a splash and spend big money on a player who could help Dallas contend without necessarily placing the team on a hard cap. Well, I mean, Dallas might not have a specific target since all the remaining 2021 free agents available aren't necessarily superstar players, but this doesn't change the fact that Dallas still has quite a bit of cap flexibility that they can utilize. While for sure, Josh Richardson's $11.6 million player option will be a huge factor here. If he opts out, Dallas would have $36.9 million in cap space, which would be enough to afford the max type of player. But if he opts in, they would still have $25.3 million in cap space, which is in max money range, but it would still be enough to sign really good players. And one other thing, I think Dallas would definitely want to resign Tim Hardaway Jr., especially after he showed up as the team's second leading scorer in the playoffs. While theoretically speaking, they could still resign him whatever happens with the Josh Richardson situation. And honestly, even if they resign Hardaway, Dallas can still create max cap space at the same time, but to do that, they would most likely have to trade guys like Richardson, Dwight Powell, or Maxi Kleber. But if everything turns out well, who can the Mavs realistically land this 2021 in order for them to use that cap space effectively? While veterans like CP3, Mike Conley, or Kyle Lowry are all 33 and older, which would make you wonder if they're really the right fits next to Luka. Well, Dallas can offer huge unmatchable deals to restricted free agents like John Collins, Jarrett Allen, or Lonzo Ball, but I mean, would they really want to pay max money to guys who aren't really number 2 options? So I mean, at this point, I think the 2021 free agent who makes the most sense to be pursued by the Mavs is DeMar DeRozan. I mean, yeah, the Spurs can afford to resign him, but they also have a huge group of young guards who are waiting for their turn to take over. Well, I think DeRozan will fit well with Luka. He can give the Mavs 20 points a night, he can be a real secondary playmaker, and he can create his own shot. Other teams will be turned off by his 3-point shooting limitations, but I think Dallas can afford to pay a mid-range guy like him because Dallas will still have Porzingis and other shooters to pick up the slack from deep. And most importantly, DeRozan comes fresh off one of the most productive seasons of his career. He'll definitely bring additional star power to Dallas, and he can become the Mavericks' second star for the time being. And I'm pretty sure that a core of Luka, KP, DeMar DeRozan, and Tim Hardaway Jr., if they're able to create space to resign him, will be one of the most feared offensive units in the entire NBA. While for sure, the subsequent 2022 and 2023 free agency periods will be loaded with much more talent. It's where you'll find stars like Bradley Beal, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, Chris Middleton, Julius Randle, or even Nikola Jokic. But let's be real, some of those guys will sign extensions before they even hit free agency. And as I've said earlier, adding a max guy would be substantially more difficult for the Mavs beginning in 2022 because that's the time Luka's max extension would kick in, and if the Mavs still have Porzingis under contract by then, the more difficult it would be for them to have that cap flexibility. So I think this 2021 offseason will be a really crucial period for the Mavs in terms of building the right team around Luka. But I mean, there's a catch here. Other than Luka Doncic, who is expected to sign his max deal soon, the Mavs don't have any other player under contract beginning in the 2024 to 2025 season. And by that time, KP's deal would have already expired as well. And so I think the 2024 offseason might be the perfect time for the Mavs to strike on not just one, but maybe a couple of all-star players to team up with Luka. I mean, the 2024 free agency class features all-star level talents like Devin Booker, Domantas Sabonis, Karl Anthony Towns, and Jaylen Brown, who are all 25 years old and younger as of the moment, and most of whom would want to win a championship by that time. So who knows, maybe the Mavs just might have to be a little more patient and wait for 3 more years, because by 2024, Luka will only be 25 and the Mavs will have all the cap space in the world to sign stars alongside him by that time, provided they don't sign anyone to more than 3-year deals beginning this 2021 offseason. But of course, Luka is a generational talent and is definitely ready to win now. But that doesn't mean that the Mavs should lose patience in dealing with all of these. I mean, one way or another, future all-star free agents will find a way to come to Dallas to play with Luka, because he's just the type of guy who gives you a clear path to a championship. It just happened that those all-stars just aren't available at this point. But in the end, all the responsibility to provide Luka with a better second star will fall upon the Mavs front office. And whether they're able to find that kind of player this offseason or probably 3 years from now, they ultimately have to be able to do that to avoid putting Luka in a LeBron James to Miami kind of situation. What do you guys think? How can the Mavs realistically get Luka Doncic a better second star? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, this is Real Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.